The cameras were already on. They always were. Daniel Whitmore sat alone in his private office, the glow of 6 security screens reflecting in his tired eyes. On one screen was the front gate. On another, the hallway. One showed the kitchen, one the living room, and one showed his study. The safe door in the study was wide open. Stacks of cash sat inside. Gold watches, important documents, everything a struggling person might dream of taking. Daniel's hand trembled slightly as he held his phone. "Let's see who you really are," he whispered. Downstairs, the maid had no idea she was about to change his life forever. The man who trusted no one. Daniel Whitmore wasn't born rich. He grew up counting coins with his mother, eating leftovers, dreaming of a life where money wouldn't control every decision. He worked harder than everyone around him, built a security tech company from nothing, and by 46, he had everything people called success. Everything except peace. Because 2 years ago his world shattered. Late-night drive. Sudden crash. Twisted metal. Screaming sirens. Daniel survived. His 9-year-old son Leo did not walk again. The doctors used careful words. Permanent. Spinal damage. Vulture. Daniel remembered holding Leo's small hand and promising, "Papa is here. I'll protect you. Always." But protection came with fear. Fear that no one would care for Leo the way he did. Fear that someone would hurt him, neglect him, or use him. And worst of all, fear that kindness didn't exist without a price. So Daniel installed cameras everywhere. Not because he was cruel, 'cause he was scared. The maid nobody noticed. Her name was Aisha, 23 years old, soft-spoken, from a small town. She arrived every morning at 7 and left before sunset. She didn't wear makeup or fancy clothes. She didn't talk much. At first, Daniel barely noticed her. Until he started watching the cameras more closely. Aisha greeted Leo every morning like he mattered. "Good morning, champion," she'd say, kneeling to his level. She never rushed him. Never spoke loudly. Never sighed when things took longer. When Leo spilled juice, she laughed with him. When his hands shook during therapy, she encouraged him. When he felt angry, she listened. Daniel told himself it was an act. People always acted. Until they didn't. That's why the test was necessary. At least, that's what he told himself. Trap. That morning, Daniel did something he had never done before. He left the safe unlocked. Wide open. Then he left the house. From his car parked a block away, he watched the live feed on his phone. Minutes passed. Aisha cleaned the living room, the kitchen, the hallway. Then she pushed Leo's wheelchair toward the study so he could look out the window. Leo stopped suddenly. "Aisha, Papa's door is open." She frowned. "That's strange," she murmured. She pushed the door gently, and froze. The open safe stared back at her like temptation itself. Daniel leaned forward. His heart pounded. This was the moment. When temptation meets character. Aisha stepped inside the room slowly. She looked at the money. Then she looked at Leo. Leo swallowed. "That's Papa's money." Aisha nodded. "Yes. And it's not ours." She reached toward the safe. Daniel's breath caught. Her fingers hovered over the cash. Then she pulled her hand back as if burned. He shut the safe door. Locked it. Daniel blinked in disbelief. But what happened next shattered him. Aisha slid down to the floor, her back against the safe, and covered her face. She cried. Silent tears. Heavy ones. Leo panicked. "Aisha, did I do something wrong?" She wiped her eyes quickly and forced a smile. "No, my brave boy. You did nothing wrong." "Then why are you crying?" She hesitated. Then whispered words she thought no one would ever hear. "Because sometimes doing the right thing hurts. Especially when you need help yourself." Daniel's chest tightened painfully. The call that broke him. Aisha stood, hands shaking, and pulled out her phone. She dialed Daniel's number. "Sir," she said softly when he answered, "I don't know if this was a mistake, but your safe was open. I locked it. I didn't take anything." Please, please check it. There was silence on the line. Then Daniel spoke, his voice rough. I'm coming home. Aisha's face went pale. She hung up and turned to Leo. Everything will be okay, she said, though her eyes were filled with fear. Daniel stared at the screen long after she left the study. For the first time in years, he cried. Not because someone tried to steal from him, but because someone didn't. The truth comes out. Daniel arrived home sooner than Aisha expected. She stood in the living room, hands folded, ready to be fired. I understand if you don't want me here anymore, she said before he could speak. I know how it must look. Daniel shook his head slowly. I saw everything. Her breath caught. I tested you, he said quietly. And I was wrong to do it. Aisha lowered her eyes. I don't judge you, she said. Fear makes people do things. Daniel swallowed hard. Why didn't you take it, he asked. She answered without hesitation. My father taught me, when you take what isn't yours, you lose your soul before you gain anything. Daniel felt the weight of years of distrust crash down on him. Leo's words. Leo rolled forward. Papa, he said softly. Aisha makes me feel normal. Daniel knelt in front of his son. You were always normal, he said, his voice breaking. I just forgot how to be human. He turned to Aisha. You're not just an employee, he said. You're family, if you want to be. Tears streamed down her face. I just wanted him to feel safe, she whispered. Daniel nodded. And you made me feel something I thought I'd lost. A house that healed. From that day on, things changed. Daniel removed half the cameras. He came home earlier. He ate dinner with Leo and Aisha at the same table. The house slowly filled with laughter again. Leo began therapy with renewed hope. Aisha stayed, not because of money but because she was valued. One evening, Daniel found Leo asleep in his wheelchair, Aisha covering him with a blanket. Daniel whispered, "Thank you." She smiled. "For trusting again. The ending that matters." Months later, Daniel shared the story at a charity event. Not to boast but to confess. The clip went viral. Millions watched. Millions cried. But Aisha never asked for recognition. She already had something better. Belonging. And Daniel learned a lesson no amount of wealth could buy. The real test isn't what people do when they're watched. It's who they are when they think no one is watching. The safe was closed. But Daniel's heart finally opened. Sometimes the biggest tests in life aren't written on paper. They aren't announced. And they aren't meant to trap others. They are meant to reveal us. A millionaire thought he was testing loyalty with money. But what he uncovered was something far more rare than wealth: character. A young maid walked into temptation. And walked out with her dignity untouched. And in doing so, she healed a broken home. Restored a father's faith. And gave a little boy something no safe could ever protect: hope. So the next time you wonder if kindness still exists in this world, remember this story. Because when no one is watching, that's when who we truly are speaks the loudest. If this story touched your heart, leave a like, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe for more stories that remind us humanity is still alive. Thank you for watching. And remember, the greatest riches are never locked in a safe.